Good morning. The legislature is back from recess on the matter of Bill number 7-38 COR. Gentlelady from Tamuning, ma'am, you are recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
And good morning to my colleagues, too. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, in regards to Bill 7-38, we know that there's some issues in here, but I do have some amendments, so I ask my colleagues to please keep an open mind on there. But let me begin with the reality of today. The contamination in Jigo. It's already triggered a state of emergency. And now Manila faces similar threats. Our aquifer is Guam's only source of drinking water. Once compromised, there is no recovery. This bill, as written, risks further damages through mass grading and mining without strong environmental safeguards. It lacks a mandated environmental impact statement, buffer zones, clear protections for lot 5412's fragile crossed features. There's no binding timeline or quality for homestead lots, leaving families in limbo while profits take priority. Lifeline rates are optional, not guaranteed, undermining the Chamorro Land Trust's mission of affordability. Revenue projections are outdated, and without independent monitoring, we risk repeated past mismanagement. Most critically, there's no firm reservation of aggregate for local housing. The military can import. Our families cannot afford to import. And I'm talking about aggregate. We know that there is a scarce amount of that material on this island. Revenue projections are outdated, and without independent monitoring, we risk repeated past mismanagement. That is what I said earlier. We talked about the hospital, and one of the biggest problems there was mismanagement. Guam is already losing its people to economic hardship, my colleagues. If we continue down this path, we risk turning our island into one big military base while our people are priced out of their homeland. I urge my colleagues to support amendments that guarantee environmental protections, affordability, and local access. Without them, this bill fails the people that it claims to serve. Mr. Speaker, I have several amendments to proffer that address more of these concerns. And it's all, I believe it's been passed out to my colleagues already for them to review. I hope they've had a time, and if there's anyone who wishes to take a little more time, Mr. Speaker, to review these amendments. In the event they find something that is even more compelling to protect our environment, to protect our people, and to still provide the most important thing, the affordability of housing. If no one, Mr. Speaker, has any requests to take a pause, with your permission, I would like to continue with my amendments.
Proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first amendment, Mr. Speaker, is on line 16, page 3. And this amendment begins on section 2, 7512C2 of Chapter 7, Title 21 Guam Code. Annotated of the bill is amended to read, award of lessee through competitive bids for CLTC Lot 5412 Manila, the Chamorro Land Trust shall, and we strike out immediately, determine whether the undeveloped portion of Lot 5412 falls within 9% of its total remaining unassigned Chamorro Land Trust land area inventory? If so, the Chamorro Land Trust may, and it's striking out shall, immediately approve that is also stricken out, authorize a solicitation on such portions of Lot 5412 for material extraction, and then included is provided that a full environmental impact study commissioned by the Chamorro Land Trust has been completed, reviewed, and accepted pursuant to the Guam Environmental Protection Agency regulations. This requirement shall be mandatory and non-waivable. It's self-explanatory. It provides protections. Even on the federal side, the US EPA looks at Guam to ensure that they do first their due diligence in protecting the environment before stepping in, such as we're seeing today in Chico. So I ask my colleagues and the author of this bill to please accept this amendment as one major protection for our people of Guam.
Okay. On the amendment, title AB7 TTTL16 P3 for line 16, page 3. On the amendment, good Senator from Jigo, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the author of the amendment, I support your amendment. I reviewed all your amendments, and I have no reservations or any reluctance to any of them. As a matter of fact, all this does is actually gets Guam EPA involved to make sure they're doing their job. And when you remove the shall to may, it forces them to not turn back to us, this body, and say that we didn't allow you the flexibility to do what you should do. And I fully support, and like I said, not only this amendment, Mr. Speaker, but to the author of 4 other amendments. I'm in full support of every one of them. It's good. It expands, but it allows this to continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman from Talalova, will you recognize, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a point of inquiry to the amendment's author. When we look at environmental impact studies, especially for this provision, are there any other agencies where we require an environmental impact study that this would be consistent with in the current Guam Code annotated?
Author, yield to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, Mr. Chair, the EIS, environmental impact studies, are usually done whenever anybody, like for instance, wants to get a license in quarrying. When anybody building a home, requires some impact study with regards to runoff, water runoff, to erosion in areas when building. So there are other protections put in place, but this is a totally different animal that we're talking about. We're disrupting a whole side of a mountain that can jeopardize the environment. We're talking about our water lens. So if there is any in there, I'm not aware of it off the top of my head, but it's the same perspective of providing safeguards whenever any construction is going on in the government, and this is a mass construction or extraction of minerals.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Mr. Speaker, it does to an extent. I'm not against the amendment. When we think about the land trust and their ability to do something like this, it would be, does the Waterworks Authority do environmental impact studies when they were creating wells or when they're doing other capital projects? I just wanted to make sure that this was consistent with the other public policies that we have relative to any work, especially when it comes to this. I support the amendment. I'm just for frame of reference, is it done in any part of the government was particularly my question, but otherwise I do support the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Good Senator from Mipa, you recognize, sir.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, Manana Sidus to the people of Guam. Undunkaluna Sidus Masi, thank you for watching on our YouTube stream and our Docomo GTA stream. Hope you're having a good Tuesday morning. Well, I appreciate the hard work of the good senator from Tamuning and kind of combing through the bill and proffering numerous amendments that she believes will kind of bring the bill back more into a kind of a more responsible area. I just want to rise and state for the record that the amendment does nothing to address the families that are currently occupying this lot that we're trying to turn into a quarry with this bill, Mr. Speaker. And so I'm not going to be supporting any amendment that doesn't address the simple fact that we're trying to go into an area where people live. We're trying to go into an area where families are homesteading on these Chamorro Land Trust Commission lots. And we're trying to build a quarry all around their ears. And I'll be reading some testimony from a couple of these families in just a little bit. Sir, I think there's also been testimony provided on the record from the hiking community, which uses this area to hike. It's a very beautiful location. So I'm not sure why we're trying to bulldoze it and put a quarry there. So I just wanted to rise and state for the record that although I support the due diligence of the author of these amendments, and I support the hard work that she did in combing through the bill and bringing it a little more to the center of what I think is reasonable, it's going to be very difficult for me to support this bill, whether amended or not, simply because we're going to be impacting the very families that we're saying we're trying to support with a measure like this. So, Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to just state that for the record.
Thank you very much, sir. On the amendment, are there any senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Tidy, you want to close with the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you to my colleagues for, and of course, the author of this bill to support the amendments that I proffered. And, you know, with regards to the EIS, you know, EIS provides public transparency and accountability. The EIS process requires public participation and review. And that means also those neighbors that are near this area that's going to be quarried to also have the ability to chime in. So I understand even the concerns of the previous speaker, and want to rest assured that there are other amendments in here that will help protect the Chamorro Land Trust's intent of providing homes. And then now with this amendment, it also provides that environmental impact statement so that those who live in the area will also have their chance to find ways to mitigate whatever harms that may cause the neighboring properties in this area. So I ask my colleagues to, those who have reservations, to at least reconsider this, because if this bill passes, at least this particular measure is the largest safeguard that we can have for our people. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I humbly ask for everyone's support.
Thank you. On the amendment, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries.
Mr. Speaker, if I may continue.
Continue, please.
Mr. Speaker, the second amendment in front of you is starting on line 21, page 3, and it's 75122C2A of Chapter 75, Title 1, Guam Code Annotated of the bill is amended to read. A, environmental, and this is to be included into the legislation as whole. I know it's quite extensive, so if there's anyone who needs some time to review, I will do so, but it reads, A, environmental impact study required. The EIS shall specifically evaluate 1, potential impacts to the northern Guam Lens aquifer, cross-feature sinkholes and groundwater resources. 2, affects a limestone forest and wildlife habitat. 3, impacts the cultural and historical sites, coastal access and scene access. 4, dust, noise, and traffic impacts on adjacent communities and landowners. And 5, proposed mitigation and restoration measures, including bonding requirements to ensure compliance. The EIS shall include specific mitigation recommendations for each identified impact, which shall be incorporated as a binding condition of any license agreement issued by this section. The Chamorro Land Trust shall not issue a solicitation or execute a license agreement under this section until the findings of the EIS has been presented to y legislatura en Guam. B, independent appraisal in suit market value required. Prior to issuing any solicitation under this section, the Chamorro Land Trust shall obtain at least one independent appraisal of the in-site market value of limestone aggregate and related materials located within Lot 5412 for the purpose of this section. In-suit market values shall mean its fair value of the material value it remains in the ground prior to extraction, processing, or transition. The Commission shall establish a minimum royalty rate based on such appraisals, adjusted by current market conditions for aggregate on Guam, below which no bid shall be deemed responsive. This ensures that the Chamorro Land Trust captures a fair return to the trust for each unit of material extracted, regardless of the operator's subsequent costs or profit. C, priority allegations of aggregate required. Any license agreement authorized under this section shall require that not less than 50% of all aggregate and construction materials produced from Lot 5412 be reserved and made available for local construction and Chamorro Land Trust homestead development projects, including 1, beneficiaries constructing or expanding homes on Chamorro Land Trust lots. 2, affordable housing developments certified by the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority or Guam Housing Corporation. 3, public infrastructure projects directly serving Chamorro Land Trust subdivision. The reserved portion shall be sold on the mandatory lifeline rate established pursuant to this act, and shall be fulfilled prior to the sale or transfer of aggregate for military, federal, or off-island projects. D, enforcement of priority allocations. Compliance with the 30% allocation of application for the lifeline rate shall be a condition of the license agreement. 1, the license shall submit quarterly reports to the Chamorro Land Trust, verified by independent third-party audit documenting the total volume of aggregate extracted, A, B, the portion sold under priority allocations, C, the receipt of the reserved allocations, and D, the pricing applied. 2, failure to meet the required allocation to apply the lifeline rate for 2 consecutive quarters shall constitute a material breach of the license agreement and shall be grounds for suspension or termination of the license, in addition to the imposition of fines or penalties established by Chamorro Land Trust regulations. 3, all such reports shall be transmitted to y legislatura en Guam and made available to the public. Upon fulfillment, and then it includes the fulfillment of requirements outlined in 75122C2, 75122C2, A, B, C, and D. Then crossing out, finding that the undeveloped portion of Lot 5412 falls within Chamorro Land Trust 9% of totaling remaining unassigned inventory, and upon approval by Chamorro Land Trust for mineral extractions. Now that has been crossed out. And then it still maintains the Chamorro Land Trust, and then crossing out shall immediately put may. Announce a competitive request for proposal for the license for mass grading and material extractions of the undeveloped portion of Lot 54-112 in a manner that provides at least one large pad for public service building and as many homestead lots as can be accommodated under Guam Subdivision 1 development rules and regulations, and to also allow legal and clerks to make any technical corrections subsequent to these actions. Mr. Speaker, I know that was quite long, but a lot of this addresses many concerns that we've had in past history. Remember what happened at the runway, Way Park Runway, where mineral was extracted without any monitoring, without any due diligence of, reporting. So this protects that. We also want to ensure, Mr. Speaker, in some of the comments that were made here, that there's accountability, and that Chamorro Land Trust needs to be part. They need to be part of the monitoring, the enforcement, eyes on the ground. And many times they haven't, my colleagues. So it's a responsibility is on them. We put a board in place for a reason, and we confirm them for a reason. So other than that, Speaker, I stand ready to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the amendment, are there any senators wishing to speak on the amendment? On the amendment. Gentlelady from Georgia, you're recognized, ma'am.
Just Masi, this is a huge amendment, and I thank my colleague for all of the work that she's done to make this bill better, to better protect the people of Guam, and more importantly, the beneficiaries of this trust who are waiting for leases. The beginning, of course, she puts in detail the environmental impact study, what's going to be required in there. And my only issue with that is that it says the EIS shall include specific mitigation recommendations for each identified impact, which shall be incorporated as binding conditions of any license agreement issued under this section. And I agree that mitigation should be binding, and but I want to make sure that if it cannot be mitigated, or if the recommendation is that this is too important to try to mitigate and that the mitigation is to avoid it, then the CLTC is able to make that determination as opposed to being forced to proceed with substandard mitigation. Because we have seen this type of mitigation in many, many projects where when they make a determination that it's necessary to proceed, they come up with the mitigation plans, but these have not been preserving our burial sites. These mitigation plans have not been preserving our unique limestone forests that are here on Guam. These mitigation plans have really allowed, in some cases, the extraction of anything archaeological or that shows the history of this place, and to move it into a museum, if we're lucky. But that's the worst case scenario. And so when we're talking here, and we already have seen some archaeological studies, and we have seen the some of the reports talking about the limestone forest here, the cliff line, particularly the cliff line, the coastline below, because this proposal does not specify how low they are going to be able to carve down this cliff. And that's what it's proposing, is to carve the cliff line over there behind the GPA, GWA, Gloria Nelson building. And they're claiming that that is necessary without any type of parameters to build housing on Guam. That's a false narrative. It's a lie. And then they talk about an independent appraisal. And this is an excellent amendment because we have seen, as the author said, we have seen not just other agencies of the government of Guam, but in particular the CLTC come in here, and some senators come in here with bills to lease out our submerged lands for $10,000 a year, or for a basketball court. They have no qualms, because somebody's going to profit, and normally it's these gigantic multi-million-dollar corporations. Because the Chamorro Land Trust, that's not their forte to appraise the land, to enter into engagements with multinational companies. We're still waiting for the leases of the lands that we have available, for the subdivisions of the lands that we have given money to be made available, for sewer, as we have provided to every village on Guam, to be provided to Chamorro Land Trust properties. So yes, we want them to get a fair return for the trust. It is a trust. The trustees are supposed to be acting like fiduciaries. They have a fiduciary obligation to benefit that trust, not to benefit multinational corporations that need our aggregate to make their profit on their contracts. And so the valuation is very important. And we've heard some of their proposals for valuation. But this bill takes away legislative purview over any of that, any review, as we have had for the long-term leases, and says, here, Chamorro Land Trust, you decide what is the correct value for this. But this amendment at least puts some burden on them to do due diligence. I'm just not so sure how serious they're going to take it, because this new board seems in a rush to approve this mineral extraction from their properties as if that's what this trust was created for. It's not created for profits, for industry. Commercial leases are necessary when they are necessary. But they prioritize this over putting out the leases on the land that we do have available to us today. Because senators prioritize mineral extraction over putting out the leases that we have available to us today, the money to survey, and even the money to put in infrastructure. And they want to do it today because somebody is in a desperate need. But now we're going to extract it and divvy it up among everybody. That's not what a trust does. A trust protects its assets for its beneficiaries. And in the end, we're going to have vacant land, no infrastructure. We're going to have environmental and historic property, cultural impacts. We're going to have no additional housing on this land from this contract. But I do support this amendment because it makes the bill better. And I don't think it goes far enough, but I really thank the author for all the work that she has done. And again, public infrastructure she requires on subsection 3C3. The reserved portions shall be sold at the mandatory lifeline rate established pursuant to this act and shall be fulfilled prior to the sale or transfer of aggregate for others. This lifeline rate, though, doesn't match the title of public infrastructure projects. That's what the CLTC needs to do. Because if GWA can't find it important enough to bring sewer over the aquifer to the CLTC properties, then the CLTC has to do that for themselves. And I would guess that every single cubic foot of this aggregate they could use when they are ready, when they have their process moving for their leases. But I support this amendment because it puts in, at least, they're going to be required to get recommendations on mitigation. It gives the CLTC some discretion as to whether the appraisal, as to the appraisal amount. It prioritizes use of the aggregate, not necessarily, it says for local housing construction and Chamorro Land Trust Commission homestead development projects. And other things, including GURA housing and public infrastructure projects. And again, I hope that Chamorro Land Trust, I don't think that they've actually done a thorough study of this and that they have any idea at this point what this aggregate could do for them when they are ready to use it. But I support this amendment. Thank
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the amendment, the good gentleman from Tumuning, sir, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, and I certainly support this amendment and amendments that are being proposed and proffered to strengthen the bill. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to rise to add some perspective as to why during the public hearing I supported this bill and some of the comments that are being made on the floor today, to kind of add some perspective to this from the time when I served as the president of the Guam Housing Corporation. Mr. Speaker, this lot and properties have been contemplated for many, many years now for some sort of negotiation between the ability to be able to do this mineral extraction, to provide, of course, for aggregate needed for all of Guam, and also provide the opportunity to leave the property in a condition such that it will be suitable for housing to be developed by the Guam Land Use or the Chamorro Land Trust. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, there would really be no construction there because of the cost it would take to be able to render the property in the form of being able to be level and to put infrastructure in to be able to add acres of property to the Land Trust Commission that could actually be developed. I like the discussion of let's arrive there at this point, maybe pair the fact that as this process goes forward and the plan for the property that will be then rendered for the Chamorro Land Trust to be able to build on, and simultaneously discuss infrastructure improvements along the way, because all this talk about the aquifer, that's correct. The best way to ensure the property that will be left in the inventory of Chamorro Land Trust to be able to develop properties and not have any effect over it would be to have property that is left with the ability to have infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure. The reason why it was a discussion with Guam Housing Corporation is, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, the Guam Housing Corporation is the premier lender for Chamorro Land Trust property. Until we have any laws that change or some method of the full backing of the government of Guam, because it's not fee simple property under the Chamorro Land Trust agreements for the beneficiaries of 99 years, they cannot go to Bank Pacific, Bank of Guam, Bank of Hawaii, Bank to get a loan to build a house. So that is why these discussions continually happen between Department of Land Management, Chamorro Land Trust, Guam Housing Corporation, because we talk a lot of talk about wanting to help the land trust recipients. But when an opportunity comes up to where even the aggregate, when we can finally get our act together and get a subdivision underway that's currently being proposed to be mined, we'll build houses there, along with the houses and other developments within our community. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to be clear on one thing as well.
Point of order,
and we
Mr.
can
Speaker.
get some.
My apologies, Senator, but I'd like to raise a point of order that the balcony is now being locked to the public, and I'd like that to be corrected. This is a
I understand. No,
Guam Legislature.
no, I understand. I didn't know that. I will address it.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I agree. The balcony should be open. Mr. Speaker, so this discussion about the proposal is something that being contemplated, because what's going to be left, and I know definitely we have to make sure that all the regulatory processes are in place, that you cannot, go to the point of where you're intruding into the aquifer, creating those situations and the like. There's currently quarrying going on within the same back road area, Mr. Speaker. We're well aware of that with another company. And so this is a practice that is done because this is where we live. A limestone-rich area that can provide aggregate to construct. Now, I want to also make mention, and we can get more information on this. I know there's a lot of discussion about this is for the military buildup. I'm sure there's some construction along with the military buildup that requires and that they purchase aggregate for their purposes. But I can tell you, for a lot of their purposes, they bring in a lot of their own aggregate because of the need for the strength of the aggregate for a lot of what they're building and what they plan to build, and their specifications. So a majority of this, more than likely, will be for our people. And you cannot build affordable homes if you're building and bringing in aggregate by the shipload. So don't give away the farm, I get that. Strengthen the bill, I get that. Having Chamorro Land Trust at the table, I get that. Because I agree, a lot of times we sit down and we talk about bad senators, but we also have a situation whereby a lot of times our government agencies aren't moving and making these arrangements themselves. They want the plan, they want to do it, they want more property to build housing for Chamorro Land Trust recipients, they want level property, they want to be able to provide for the people of Guam. But if a senator doesn't introduce a bill, it's like nothing moves. And this is not these senators, this is not this administration, this is constant discussion within the entities that try and are pulling and tugging to try to figure out how to solve this riddle. You have aggregate. You have the need to have level property. You need infrastructure. The people of Guam need aggregate. How do we make this work? So, I get it. We'll have our statements. We'll make our decisions on who's a bad guy or who's a good guy. But at the core of this, pun intended, I guess, at the core of this is to get to the point to where we can create a win-win-win. So let's amend it. Let's monitor it. Let's have the hearings that we need to make sure that's going properly, that it's a good deal for the people of Guam, that it's a good deal for the Chamorro Land Trust. But we've killed ideas. We're good at that. When all we really are is suspicious about the future. So let's put eyes on it. But I appreciate these amendments. And I'm sure what we should do after this bill passes is, I'm sure the Land Committee will call a roundtable and say, guys, are we good? Are we ready to roll? Does everybody feel as though they're going to get what we're trying to do here? Including the neighbors who maybe even have a nicer neighborhood? Let's put those discussions on the table. But until we can try to have a highest and best use, and I think that's probably why some of the board members who understand this issue, I'm not saying they're necessarily in a hurry, but they know the reality. Because besides selling real estate, which some of them do, and title insurance and the like, they also realize there's a need to build. So I appreciate this discussion. But I had to lend my experience to this process because it's the true experience of every person. Even before you can get a lease to contemplate building that house, your first stop, other than being a veteran, which is the next qualifying loan you can get, and it's best when it's paired up. It's a really good deal. Guam Housing and Veterans, it's a great deal to build on Chamorro Land Trust property. Just wanted to lend those comments and appreciate the author for adding strength to this bill that I think is going to end up being a workable product of something that's been trying to be done for over a decade. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, are there any senators wishing to speak on the amendment? No other senator? Gentlelady from Barragata, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do commend the author for trying to put some safeguards into the bill, because as it exists, it definitely there are flaws, like I mentioned yesterday. Yeah, one of the things I want to reiterate some of the sentiments of one of the previous speakers, in which, we've seen mitigation fail, where the land is destroyed despite mitigation negotiations. And I think it's important to add an amendment to that, to also include the option to preserve and conserve. What if there are burials there? Are we going to what they call salvage archaeology, which is really destruction of the site of the burials? Because we know that information of the site, if we remove it from that site, we lose that connection to our ancestry. And every time we do that, we lose our connection to our past and our heritage. And so that's why, we've advocated for many years for preservation in place. And it took decades. It took decades for them to, at least the military, that is, to do that. But still, I think it falls short because we're destroying the context. The context of our heritage. We're seeing that destroyed before our very eyes. So I think that to make this slightly better, or to infuse that concept into this amendment, just want to add that word preservation in number 5, A5, after mitigation. And I hope I don't have to make a written amendment, but so it says proposed mitigation on A5, proposed mitigation and restoration measures, including bonding requirements to ensure compliance. So after mitigation is preservation.
So to get this right, ma'am, on 5, proposed
mitigation,
comma. Okay.
Preservation. So on A5, it says proposed mitigation and then comma, then I would add comma, preservation in place, maybe preservation, I think that's good enough. And and then it adds it to that, and restoration measures.
On the amendment to the amendment, on,
And sorry, can I also include another part to this, so I don't have to do another amendment?
is it continuous to this?
It's at the A, it's the last part of A.
Why don't we just do this for this?
Okay. Okay.
On the amendment, to the amendment, after, on 5, on A, section A, subsection 5, it'll say proposed mitigation, comma, preservation, comma, and restoration. Are there anyone want to speak to the
Mr. Speaker,
gentleman from Diego?
just a simple question. I don't know if the author will know this, but doesn't the EIS already reveal that and identify that we need to make some preventive preservation requirements? I mean, EIS is very wide. It's not like it's one specific issue. It's wider than that. So I'm just curious: does the author of the amendment understand that, or am I misunderstanding what an EIS is? And maybe the author of the original EIS can explain that more. And that'll be the senator from Tamuning, other than the author of the amendment. So I just want to make sure I have no problem on preservation at all. I just want to make sure if it's already there, do we need to? It's almost like we need to teach somebody how to walk when they're already running. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Would the author of the amendment to the amendment yield to that?
Yes, so mitigation term is tied to more of the non-historic preservation law, whereas preservation is tied to, it's two different laws really that it's tied to. So when we're talking about mitigation, we're often talking about biological assets versus preservation is more tied to the archaeological. So I feel that the preservation part needs to be included in this.
Does that answer your question, Senator Slogstein? Senator Tidigo, you want to add to this? Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I was distracted for a minute. What was the question? If I can have 1 minute?
Well, let's take a 1 minute recess. Back from recess. Senator Tidigo, you recognize, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize for that pause. But, I respect in every aspect of the word, the author of the amendment to the amendment. She definitely does her due diligence as well and ensure that in every angle, we're covered in protecting not only the environment, but mitigation, as well as preservation. I believe that the EIS, when it comes out, the study will come out, does incorporate that too as well, but I don't see the harm in incorporating it since it already does it in the EIS study. So I think, just like you said, sometimes our amendments or our bills are to remind these agencies, what their responsibility is. And if that's the case, then so be it. We will remind them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Slogstein, you satisfied? Good? Okay. Any other wishing to speak on the amendment to the amendment to add preservation to subsection 5? No other? Senator Perez, would you like to close? Okay. On the amendment to the amendment to add the word preservation, to subsection 5 of section A. Are there any objections to that amendment? No objection, motion carries. Senator Perez, you still have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The other amendment I would like to add is in the same section, subsection A, on the last sentence. So change the word presented to approved. So it has to be approved by y legislature in Guam. So I think that, yeah, so the idea is that, we are the people's house, and, should there be any concerns or, that we represent the people. And so that's why that's there, is to approve it versus present. Otherwise, there's no transparency, or there's less transparency.
So you want to change presented to approved by?
Yes, approved, yes, correct.
Okay.
Approved by y legislature in Guam.
Okay. On the amendment, the other amendment to the amendment, changing out presented to approved by. Okay. Okay, there has been an objection to the amendment. Anybody want to speak to the amendment to the amendment? Okay, there has been an objection. Since there's an objection, all those in favor of changing out the words presented to approved by, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Perez, you still have the floor, ma'am.
I just want to thank the author of the main amendment for this, putting transparency and accountability. But again, to me, the site matters. To destroy the cliff line in this area is really concerning, that we have a bill that will enable that. Again, as I said yesterday, we really need to have a moratorium. And I just want to also address that this high urgency for aggregate, that really calls, if we are to be resilient community, we have to think outside the box. We can't just continue digging up our island and expect that we're going to have an island left to sustain us. This is the land that is able to sustain us because it actually is it is the aquifer. And again, it took millennia for the aquifer to develop, and our neighboring islands are probably wishing they had this. Other islands are wishing they had this aquifer. But yet we're here today so willing to destroy it. We as indigenous people of this land should hold on to the wisdoms that have allowed us to sustain ourselves for over 3,500 years, some say even longer. We need to respect and reconnect with that relationship to our environment. This practice is not going to sustain us. And we can think of innovative ways that doesn't rely on mineral extraction of a non-renewable resource. We need to listen and not expect that we're going to continue to sustain ourselves by destroying the very environment that sustains us. Just because we can makes us empowered to do it. This is insanity. We need to wake up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the amendment that has been amended, any other senator wishing to speak on it? No other senator? Senator Tideway? Oh, gentleman from EPAN, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to welcome our people who are on the balcony, the people's balcony up there, just for the viewing public. I'm not sure if you're going to get to see, but we do have some members of the public who have concerns about the bill who are here in the session hall with signs expressing their concerns. So I just wanted to welcome them to the People's House this morning. And again, I rise to commend a very thorough, diligent, hard work of the profferer of this amendment. And it just kind of reminds me, you know, depending on whose bill it is, anytime you get a stack of amendments like we're seeing now, I can't even remember how many times my good colleague from Barrigado who just spoke comes in with a stack of amendments and everyone's crying, send it back to committee because Len had too many amendments. But like I said, it depends on whose bill it is, because we get a bill in here and they like the author. Then we could have a stack of amendments like that and we're just going to go through them. So I know that people are watching and they see that too. And I think the problem is with these amendments, as good as they are, it's almost like we're putting lipstick on the Babwin Halumtano. Not just lipstick, mascara, eyeliner, blush, we're putting a perm. But at the end of the day, the bill, I just can't support it. All of these amendments should have been included in the bill when it was in committee, and these amendments should have been in the version of the bill that we're discussing on the floor. Instead of this kind of starting from scratch like we're seeing. And again, the environmental impact statements, although I do appreciate, I know the author had said that she would proffer amendments that would deal with the families that are currently living on this lot. But we've seen all too many times on our island that, you know, an environmental impact statement is really nothing more than a piece of paper that gets shoved through the process and rubber stamped. And many times these concerns that are raised in the environmental impact statements are just mitigated away. And so I appreciate that the good author, the good senator from Barrigado was able to get in an amendment that called for preservation, even though I think if we're all being honest with each other and we're predicting the future a little bit, I highly doubt that preservation will be the option that's selected for this very prime and important piece of property that sits in an area where many of our people go and access the Fidian Cove. And we're talking again about families that are already dealing with the impacts of the quarries that are nearby. And I'm sorry, my dear people of Guam, that these families on these Chamorro Land Trust lots probably can't afford to donate $1,000 to the gubernatorial campaigns per election. $2,000 for the primary and the general total. But you know who can afford to donate? All of the companies that are going to be bidding on this. All of these companies that we just gave a huge BPT discount to will be bidding on these properties. The retiring speaker had said something about our Cascal isn't good enough for the military. But in the testimony from the consultant who actually admitted to writing the bill, this bill came directly from an individual whose job it is to make money for these construction companies. And in his testimony, he said, this property contains high-quality limestone aggregate. Chamorro gold. And so let's not kid ourselves about how lucrative it is going to be for these companies who are using their consultants, their lobbyists, to influence our senators who honestly most of the time don't even need to be influenced. They come already with their mind made up that they want to do backflips for these companies and leave the families living on this property to inhale even more dust, to deal with even more noise, to watch the forest around them get bulldozed. So again, Mr. Speaker, although I appreciate the hard work, the diligent work of my good friend, the senator from Tamuning, in trying to, put the guardrails on this bill, I again just oppose it because of the impact, not just to the aquifer, not just to the environment, not just to the property over there by Fidian, in Fidian, but the impact to the families who currently call this land home. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. On the amendment, any other senator wishing to speak on the amendment? No. That has been amended. Senator Taitigui, you want to close on your amendment, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, thank you to my colleagues for the deliberations and discussion on them and trying to improve this amendment. So other than that, Mr. Speaker, I humbly ask for everyone's support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the amendment that has been amended, are there any objections to the amendment as amended? Are there any objections? No objections. Amendment passes. Senator Taitigui, you still have a couple more
Thank
amendments?
you, Mr. Yes, and I'll try and these are much shorter, so please indulge me. The next amendment, Mr. Speaker, is on line 12, page 5. And this amendment, Mr. Speaker, is, let me get to that, okay. Is section VII of 75122C2B of Chapter 75, Title I, Guam Code Annotated of the bill is amended to read, and then of course it stays in submit a conceptual plan of a final land form, and then it includes, which shall include a phased plan for the creation and delivery of subdividable infrastructure-ready homestead lots. The plan shall specify the minimum number of homestead lots to be delivered, establish projected completion deadlines for each phase of delivery, and acknowledge that payments to the Chamorro Land Trust under the license agreement shall be conditioned not only upon independently verified extraction volumes, but also upon the timely completion and delivery of the required homesteads, and to allow legal and clerks to make the technical corrections to the subsequent sections. This amendment, Mr. Speaker, the amendment ensures that the Chamorro Land Trust's mission delivering homestead lots to families is not overshadowed by the revenue focus of quarrying, by requiring bidders to submit a phased plan with clear deadlines for subdividable infrastructural-ready lots, and by conditioning payments on both extraction volumes and timely lot delivery. This amendment creates a forcible accountability, and it guarantees that families are not left waiting indefinitely while resources are extracted for profit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment to line 12, page 5. On the amendment to line 12, page 5. Are there any senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Gentlelady from Zonia, you're recognized, ma'am.
And I appreciate the author's intent to focus on what we're going to get, what the Chamorro Land Trust beneficiaries are going to get out of this, which is, we're hoping, homestead lots and not just a massive quarrying site. I think there's only one section in here that I would like to draw attention to, and that is and acknowledge that payments to the CLTC under the license agreement shall be conditioned not only upon independently verified extraction volumes, but also upon the timely completion and delivery of the required homestead lots. I think I understand the intent, but I think we should change that to, it's not the payments that should be conditioned, because the payments should not stop. They should be made. It's the extraction should be conditioned on the independently verified extraction volumes, also upon the timely completion and delivery of the required homestead lots. In other words, if they don't comply or they're in violation of any of those measuring what they're taking out or the completion and delivery of the homestead lots according to the schedule, then they cannot extract, because otherwise we're getting quarterly reports, and there's a lot of extraction that can occur during a quarter. And it's not the payments that should ever stop. So I think if the author would yield, I would ask to remove the words payments to the CLTC and replace that with the word extraction. So the sentence will read, and acknowledge that extraction under the license agreement shall be conditioned.
That's your proposed amendment?
Yes. That's my amendment to the amendment.
Okay, so it's take out the words payments to the CLTC and change it to with what? Can you repeat that again now?
Yes. Yes, you're correct. Take out the words payments to the CLTC and say extraction. So it will read, and acknowledge that extraction under the license agreement shall be conditioned.
Okay. On the amendment to the amendment, Madam, General Lady from Tamuning, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think if I can take a moment to talk with the proffer of the amendment, only because the whole intent was to acknowledge and to ensure that the payments to the Chamorro Land Trust under this license agreement shall be conditioned not only upon independently verified extraction volumes, but also upon timely completion and delivery of the required homestead lots. So I'm trying to cover two perspectives here. The payment, and as well as to verify that, that it coincides with the extraction. So if I can have a minute and discuss with this, because I don't want to take out the inability of putting, here's the payments for what? What extractions? And if I take away payment, I just have two extractions.
Okay.
Extraction to extraction. Okay, thank you.
Let's take a recess. back from recess. Senator Tidy Green, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you so much for the opportunity for that short recess, for such an important bill like this, and to ensure that, everybody completely understands what we're doing here and what this amendment does. After speaking with not only the author of the bill as a whole, but the proffer of the amendment to the amendment. It does make sense. However, the confusion was that my interpretation was just crossing out payment and putting extractions when we should be crossing out payments to Chamorro Land Trust. Acknowledge that extractions only under the license agreement shall be. So the confusion was not, my interpretation was not striking out to the CLTC, and it needs to be stricken out completely and just put extractions. Because earlier on in the last amendment, there is an obligation to make payment to Chamorro Land Trust. So that is done. But this one here, I think it makes sense. I believe we're all in agreement here that we want to ensure that the extractions is under the license agreement shall be conditioned upon the independently verified extraction volumes, but also upon the timely completion and delivery of required homesteads. So it's just a protection mechanism, and I stand in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the amendment to the amendment, to strike out the words payments to the CLTC and replace it with the word extraction. On the amendment to the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment to the amendment? No other senator? Senator Talai, you want to go ahead and close it? Okay. Are there any objections to the amendment to the amendment? No objection? Amendment to the amendment pass. Senator Talai, you still have the floor, ma'am.
Again, I would just want to thank the author that this amendment now to the bill requires that we see, as they are going along, the delivery of the lots in usable form, and that we're not going to wait for 6 years until the end on a promise that we're going to get usable lots at the end, and that as they go along, the CLTC can require them by their agreement to show usable lots as they are moving along. Again, if it's a quarry site, I'm not sure how really usable they're going to be until the final 6 years down the road. Also, if this contract goes on for 6 years at minimum. But at the very least, this gives the CLTC board the ability to negotiate this. And again, we do have residents living in the area that are dealing with the noted environmental impacts and health impacts of quarrying in these surrounding areas. This is originally an agriculturally zoned property. And that's why the leases there are agricultural leases. And there are several other quarries along the cliff line. With equally, we had a mineral extraction oversight hearing where it was overwhelming, the testimony from WERI, GWA, EPA, DPW is actually who brought it to our attention about the impacts of these quarries and how we have BSP was very clear. We have gaps in our law that currently are allowing quarries everywhere around this island under this fluke in the law that I tried to change, but it was rejected, which says extraction under agricultural properties, which BSP claims should say allows agricultural extraction, not mineral extraction. But again, so I thank the author for this amendment as well, which requires CLTC to ensure that we're going to get these lots in a deliverable condition as they are going along and not just waiting until the end where we might have, as we do have in some other places, completely unusable land. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the amendment as amended, gentleman from Tumuning, sir, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and certainly rise once again and commend the author for the amendment and the amendment now as amended for continuing to strengthen the bill. You know, Mr. Speaker, I have to address a couple of things from a retiring speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, a stack of amendments, while I do like the author, he's a good friend of mine, on our table, is a result, really, Mr. Speaker, of having to do this because none of the proffers right now or the supporters ever sent any of these amendments into the committee while the bill was in the committee. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I think this is the third or fourth legislature where this bill or a similar bill was introduced and just stuffed in the do not hear file of other committees or other jurisdictions who own the committee. You know, Mr. Speaker, I respect one of the retiring speakers that stood up and just said, don't do this, it's wrong. I respect that. That's how you got to say it. That's what you feel, that's what's in your stomach, that's what's in your bones, that's what's in your soul. Amen. But to diddle around sometimes and to talk about process and make these kind of discussions and not just stand up and say, I'm opposed to it, it should never happen, don't do it, it's the wrong thing to do. You can never do anything to make this right. Just say it. But to try to convolute process because there's a favor for somebody, when the truth is, it has to be done this way when no one will make the effort to do it in a committee. And no one will recognize that the agencies that are being talked about today weren't flooding the committee with amendments. We have seen this time and time again on this floor, Mr. Speaker. Whenever there's similar legislation where individuals have absolutely the right to be the vanguard of protection, but we have to stack up amendments because the disingenuousness of not just saying not no but hell no is on display when you won't do it in regular order. So we're going to continue to see stacks of amendments when individuals who don't like things that want to put safeguards in don't send it to the committee, don't write the committee and say, can we have a markup meeting because these are the 15 things I want to do, and wait for the floor. That's the way it's going to be. And it's not going to be just because I like Joe San Augustine. It's going to be because we have to do it because other committees would never do it in prior legislatures. And now we're here. So I'm going to keep supporting these great amendments, and I'm going to encourage our colleagues. This is one of the most friendly committee, 38th Guam Legislature that you can ever find. Bring your work to the committee and we'll open the door and get her done. I love the amendment and I support it. Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. On the amendment as amended, are there any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment as amended? No other senators? Senator Taitigui, ma'am, you want to close on your amendment?
I'll waive.
Okay, waiving. Okay. Is there any objection to the amendment as amended? Any objection? No objections. Motion passes. Senator Taitigui, you still have the floor, ma'am. You still have...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have my last amendment, which is on line 16, page 5. And this is a new section, a new IX number 9 to 75122C2B of Chapter 75, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated of the bill is added to read. On IX, the license agreement shall require 1. Installation of calibrated weigh-in, weigh-out scales and automated reporting to Chamorro Land Trust. 2. Quarterly independent third-party audits of extraction volumes and royalty payments to the Chamorro Land Trust. 3. Submission of quarterly public reports to El Legislature in Guam detailing extraction quantities, royalties paid, and compliance with homestead delivery and environmental requirements. Mr. Speaker, the amendment is designed to prevent underreporting of extraction volumes, require independent verification of royalties, and increase transparency and public trust. It closes the very gap that leads to mismanagement and community distrust in earlier mass grading projects. By requiring calibrated weigh scales, quarterly third-party audits, and public reporting to Legislature Guam, this amendment ensures that the Chamorro Land Trust captures its fair share of royalties and the beneficiaries can have confidence in the process. Importantly, it aligns, Mr. Speaker, with the other amendments. Just as the environmental impact statement safeguards our environment, the Homestead Delivery Plan guarantees family benefits, and the royalty appraisal secures fair value. This amendment enforces accountability through independent oversight. Together, these amendments form a comprehensive package that protects resources and fulfillment of the Chamorro Land Trust's mission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. On the amendment to line 16, page 5, okay, section 2, are there any senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Any gentlelady from Jordan, you're recognized, ma'am.
Again, this amendment is a great amendment to the bill. It's going to give them at least one option of how you're going to weigh the aggregate that's being removed. It requires quarterly reports of the extraction and the payments so that those can be accounted for as they are going along. And it requires quarterly reports detailing all of this to the legislature as well. And so, of course, the more transparency, the better, because this is necessary. Because although it may seem obvious to us now, when prior legislatures authorized the raceway to be built, that was following applications for clearing and grading, but they didn't come in here and say, we're going to clear and grade, quarry. They said, we want to build a raceway. And they applied at DPW for a permit for clearing and grading, not for a quarry, for clearing and grading. And they estimated to DPW how much grading they would be doing under that permit. Well, that permit, after several years, finally was denied for renewal by DPW because DPW recognized that the grading that had been done far, 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 far exceeded the amount that had been suggested that they were going to do under that permit. And I hope that we all know this story. The previous commission members, they went to see it for themselves. They started to question how much were they receiving versus the very visual quarrying that was going on at the site. And based on their questioning of that project, they even took videos, they took pictures, because the quarrying was being denied. I mean, they were saying, we're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. They were even having subcontracts in violation of their lease. So what this does is gives at least some protection, and if the CLTC new board is going to be as diligent as the previous board members in challenging the royalties or the amounts taken or keeping an eye on it based on this type of measurements, then maybe they're going to get a lot more fairness, and maybe we're going to know a lot sooner whether violations of any types of protections have occurred. This is the same area as a marble cave, same area as the Hawaiian rock construction quarry, the same area as the Smith Bridge quarry. It's like we're going to take that whole side of our island and turn it into a quarry on the premise of this is absolutely necessary for us to build these homes. But I strongly support this amendment just because it puts into the license agreement these minimums. I actually would ask the sponsor if she would yield to a question. These quarterly audits of the extraction volumes, do you think that that is sufficient as opposed to a monthly audit by the CLTC?
Will the author yield to the question?
Okay, this is the quarterly audits to the legislature sufficient? Is that
It says the license agreement shall require on number 2, quarterly independent third-party audits of extraction volumes and royalty payments to the CLTC.
Yeah, and the question is, do I think it's suffice, you know, the quarterly? But I'm not sure what the question is again.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I'm just asking, so this is requiring quarterly reports
Right.
of the amount that's removed, and I'm just asking if something more immediate, such as a monthly report, should be required, or do you think that the quarterly is sufficient to protect the CLTC's interest?
Well, I think so. I think the quarterly report is good, but it doesn't stop us, you know, especially the Oversight Chair of Chamorro Land Trust, to continue to keep an eye on this, as well as everyone else, you know, the public. Is it too late in the ball game after we receive something that has been justly? Then it also warrants the elimination of the contract altogether. If they're not complying to the guidelines and the rules and regulations, then we can stop it right away and require mitigation if it was not adhered to in the contract.
And again, in this regard, I want to thank some of the previous board members, such as Pika Ferren, who brought this to attention years ago when it was happening at the Raceway, and she got removed from the board. And then David Herrera, who was taking photos and videos and brought this to attention of the commission and was also removed from the board. And so I thank them for their courage in bringing that to our attention so that we can come up with additional protections such as this one today. And I thank the public auditor for doing the audit at my request of the mineral extraction of that property, which was supposed to be monitored by GITA, who had pretty much not done that for years. So again, I hope this will sufficiently protect the trust, but I support this amendment very much. Thank you to the author.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Okay, no other senators. Is there any objection to the amendment? Any objection to the amendment? No objection. Amendment passes. Senator Tati, don't you have one more?
Thank you. Yes, and the last one, Mr. Speaker. And this is on line 10, page 6, section 6, 75122F of chapter 75, title 21 Guam Code annotated of the bill, and is amended to read, F, lifeline rates authorized. The Chamorro Land Trust shall establish lifeline rates with the 3 primary policy objectives. We are crossing out, Mr. Speaker, may if practicable. We're striking that out and putting shall establish lifeline rates with 3 primary policy objectives. And this amendment makes lifeline rates mandatory. It ensures that the Chamorro Land Trust beneficiaries and affordable housing projects are guaranteed access to materials at affordable prices. You know, affordability cannot be lifted to a practicable, so this change keeps Chamorro Land Trust true to its mission and prevents the lifeline rate from becoming another broken promise. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just one correction, ma'am. Line 10, page 6 says G. Your amendment says F. If you go to line...
Okay, and have clerk make corrections to...
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then I'll also incorporate, you know, that to allow legal and clerks to make any technical corrections subsequent sections, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So, amendment, line 10, page 6, it should read, okay, subsection G, all right? On the amendment, any senator wishing to speak on the amendment? Gentlelady from Johnny, ma'am, you're recognized.
Again, this is one of the issues that I was going to bring up on the bill, and I'm so glad she's making this amendment to remove the words that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission may, if practicable. We have seen this so many times. Who's going to define practicable for these commission members? Establish these minimums, so she's now making it mandatory. There's no discretion that you will establish lifeline rates with these objectives. My issue is that under under G, the 3 primary policy objectives, first, it's for the CLTC residential lessees building or expanding homes to access below market construction materials. That's great. That's consistent with the trust's use of the trust assets. Number 2 and number 3 on this list, however, are for non-beneficiaries of the trust to ensure that they are also going to receive lifeline rates and including GURA, including other developers. And while these also have important benefits to the community, we really have to decide whether these are going to benefit the trust, to give these other sources lifeline rates from assets of the trust. And I think that the assets of the trust should primarily benefit the beneficiaries. And that's why the ancestral lands got sued and lost, because they were trying to take care of not all of their beneficiaries. All right, so the other thing that this bill does not imagine, the discussion makes it sound like this is the only source of quarrying for the government's needs, and I disagree. We actually had no testimony from DPW. We had, and as I said, the Guam Land Use Commission seems to be on a roll of approving quarrying around Guam in agriculturally zoned properties. And I actually haven't seen any denied and when I inquired about that. So I think, again, it's, but that's on the other parts of subsection G. that follow this language that's being amended, but this language being amended, I completely support. Situs Masi.
Thank you. On the amendment is proffered. On the amendment. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Ranking member from Pago Bay, ma'am, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say I stand and rise in support of the lifeline rates authorized, and that the possibility of Chamorro Land Trust Commission from may to shall establish lifeline rates with the three policy objectives. As noted by the previous speaker, I just want to make sure that these three primary policy objectives, which is guarantee that Chamorro Land Trust residential lessees building or expanding homes can access below market construction materials, helping them succeed in their homesteading journey. 2, extend this benefit to low and moderate income families building on private land as long as a deed restriction ensures the affordability is preserved for at least 10 years and meets the income limits certified by Guam Housing Corporation, or GURA, which is the Guam Housing Urban Renewal Authority. And then 3 was to support developers who construct verified affordable housing developments, especially rental or for sale projects serving the community's housing needs. So with those policy objectives in place and making it sure that these lifeline rates are authorized, I support the efforts. Sinamasi.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? None. Senator Tyree, you can close, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll waive.
Okay, she's waiving. Any objections to the amendment? Any objections to the amendment? No objection. Amendment passes.
My time probably is up, Mr. Speaker. I ran out of time, and I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues for allowing me to continue with all these amendments and hearing deliberations on both sides. This bill is definitely not perfect. Even with these amendments incorporated, it's not perfect. We are at the beginning of a road that we can provide some kind of safeguards, which we did with these amendments, but there's still a lot of work to do to make sure that we protect our people's environment and protect most especially the ability for affordable housing for our future. So I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, and thank my colleagues for all their supports on these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On Bill 738, Mr. Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, yesterday when in the introduction there was some concern, basically basically how the bill as presented. And one of the areas that I saw, and I'll just get right to it, is on page 3, section 2, that there was, the bill as proposes to repeal section 2 as it reads today and to reenact it with different language. And the concern that I had there is that section 2 as it is today provides basically the standard of how you award the lease through competitive bid process. And then the bill proposed to strike out that language and replace it with language that was restrictive to just lot 5412, Mingilo. While I see the value of the additive language, I see further that if we strike out that language, that the operative language that exists today, it's going to have an effect on all other leases, current and future. So what I propose to do in my amendment, sir, is simply restore the language on page 3, section 2, all the language that was struck out. Restore that, and then add the remaining language in there as a new subsection 3, and it'll be enumerated accordingly after that. So without getting into long reason, winded reason as to why, that's the amendment as I propose. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Speaker. On the amendment as proposed by Speaker Blas, anyone wish to speak? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do appreciate this amendment. This is one of the things that was the flaws of this bill, is that I appreciate that this amendment for correcting that. Just maybe a technical correction may needed because there is a subsection 3 in the current statute, and maybe we can renumber these items to a different number. The other question I have is the citation in the original bill. And so this is a question for the actual sponsor of the bill itself, which is part of this amendment. And so my question is on subsection B2, there is in the last sentence, there is a citation that doesn't exist. And if the author of the bill can correct it or provide an amendment to correct that. It says section 75122C2A II1, and also the numbering has to be aligned. When we change the numbering of this whole amendment, that numbering has to follow through with this particular citation. So I need clarity. This is a question for the sponsor of the bill. Clarity about that specific citation.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask,
Yes,
that is a legitimate and question that needs to be asked. If we can go ahead and deal with this question first, and then that question, when we get back to the main bill, that question can be proffered and dealt with. Okay,
Mr. Speaker, so we'll dispose of the amendment as
right.
proffered, and then we'll recognize you again, Senator Perez, to ensure that we get that question answered. On the amendment by Speaker Blas, anybody wish to speak? Gentlewoman from Zonia, you're recognized.
Thank you. I too appreciate this amendment because it's one of those things that seems to be very underhanded when you put it into a bill to remove all the competitive bidding process for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission did not object to that. I have no idea why, but I think they're more savvy than that. But it really makes me wonder what was really going on here, that this is in the bill. When we're talking about, oh, we're going to take care of one lot, when in reality, the bill was amending removing competitive bidding from commercial leases. Again, these commercial lease rules or law was put into place when Tom Adder was the chair of land, and he was very specific, and there are so many different criteria as to these commercial leases. And the Chamorro Land Trust has actually been very good at complying with them. They understand them very well. And why we would want to remove competitive bidding from their commercial leases is beyond me. So I support restoring the competitive bidding, but I think as far as taking care of technical flaws in the bill, it doesn't go far enough, as the previous speaker pointed out. and it doesn't take care of what I brought up yesterday. These laws have been greatly amended since the lawsuit and the settlement. And we decided at that time, based on the settlement and the lawyers, to move forward in a completely new law. But this is going back to the old law. And I think it's going to make things very inconsistent and confusing for these commissioners and for Guam. And because we agreed in that settlement to go forward from that day pursuant to the terms of the settlement, I believe that reneging on those terms of the settlement is, we don't even understand to now, at this point, what the impacts might actually be. Because that's the caution that we were advised in public hearings. That's the caution that they had reviewed our rules and regs. The AG who entered into the settlement had reviewed them. The other parties had reviewed them. They reviewed the law changes that we were going to make to go forward to show compliance. So I just question why we're going to go backwards. I agree with there are other citations in this bill that do not give us a clear understanding of the restrictions that they imply they are making when they are actually not making those restrictions. So I firmly believe that competitive bids should be required of the Chamorro Land Trust. I do not agree that we are going to reverse that policy for any company or for any, for all commercial leases going forward. So I will support this amendment to this bill because it makes it better than the current bill, but I still think we're going to be putting ourselves, the Chamorro Land Trust, and the beneficiaries, again, this is what caused a huge pause in the trust, was that lawsuit. It took years. And I want to commend the lawyers that were involved for the settlement. They did a great job. And that's why I don't want to jeopardize that. And I think that that's another reason why I supported that motion to send this bill back to the committee, because I don't think they took that into account at all when they tried to go back to these old laws. Susan Masi.
Susan Masi, Senator. On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Mr. Speaker, you'd like to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, the amendment, again, I don't think it was ever the intent of the author or much less anybody to be able to negate or to neglect that, we have to have a competitive bid process for other commercial leases and stuff. Obviously, some of the commercial, not all commercial leases, are for land, for quarrying or for mass grading and stuff. But I can see the necessity to be able to set the parameters and set the standards for this activity, specifically other than what was the generalities contained in the existing law. And it goes also, Mr. Chair, to what you had spoken to about earlier, in that if you look at, and again, we're just doing what we need to do, but sometimes what we need to do is because executive branch agencies fail to do their jobs. Yeah. They fail to do their jobs. That's true. Okay? And I have to agree with the gentle lady from Zamzonia or something. Is if they're in doing their jobs, if they can see that there's faults, or there's the areas that need an amendment, not so much a clarification, that's the judiciary's job. Correct. But for a clarification on this thing, then that's when we should come in. But if you look at a lot of legislation that we have before us, a lot of times, is it necessary if the agencies just do their jobs? Okay? And even in the bills as proposed and everything, they say we need a bill to do this, and they expect us to be able to provide that without the technical expertise, then we get blamed for it? That's kind of disingenuous. So I appreciate that, and again, it wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't the intent of the author. And if CLTC had passed this, why? I mean, prove this much. Why? Okay. So with that, Mr. Chair, I don't want to belabor it anymore. I ask my colleagues for the support of the amendment. Thank you very much.
Susmasi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can you also just motion as you complete the amendment that to allow legal to clarify the language and any other technical amendments?
So moved.
Susmasi, Mr. Speaker. On the amendment by Speaker Blas, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing none, amendment passes. On the bill, on the main motion as amended, anyone else wish to speak on the main motion as amended? Senator Gumitato, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to discuss Bill 7 as presented and presented by our good colleague from JIGO and amended today. As we are creating policy to expand our economy, one of the pathways to this forward expansion is through construction. Here, raw aggregate is needed to manufacture the concrete needed to build homes, offices, and government facilities, and to renovate those homes, offices, and government facilities. While we can debate alternatives or the like, this component of this core process cannot be overlooked. Without using aggregate extracted locally, we all may be paying higher prices for that particular commodity and for those particular projects. We need to look at the bigger picture here. The sustainability of the cement and concrete industries is imperative to the well-being of our planet and to human development. Here in Micronesia, we need to recognize the importance more than perhaps any other community in the world. Not only is concrete production a valuable source of societal development, but it is also a significant source of employment. Concrete is the world's most consumed man-made material. It is no wonder that in the United States alone, concrete construction accounts for millions of jobs, hundreds here locally and hundreds all across Micronesia. Since 1975, this is precisely the type of practical activity that the Chamorro Land Trust was established for. There is no question that this bill will result in positive cash flow for the Land Trust. The Land Trust, in my humble observation of at least recent board meetings this year, they continue or they try and strive to demonstrate strong leadership across many issues brought to them during their regular meetings. I thank its members, particularly those who were recently confirmed by this legislative body, for doing their homework on the issues requiring their consideration. They have a serious responsibility to get lands out to eligible beneficiaries, adjudicate complaints brought to them, and to execute commercial lease agreements, which we all hope should help facilitate infrastructure development across its inventory. It's been a perennial issue which has single-handedly prevented families from being able to construct safe and affordable homes on Chamorro Land Trust properties for the last 20 years plus. Mr. Speaker, Bill 7 presents us with a real opportunity to help fund projects from north to south. And I just wanted to add this. In their July 18, 2025 letter to the committee chair on land, They write this: on June 17, 2025, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission's Board of Commissioners discussed Bill 7-38 COR. The commissioners motioned and unanimously voted to support Bill 7-38 by authorizing the Chamorro Land Trust Commission to engage in a competitive bidding process, RFP, with the commission determining RFP applications and terms and conditions of the commercial lease, with an amendment to appoint the member as a representative. This was sent to us by Commissioner Joseph F. Artero Cameron and their board's authorized representative. Mr. Speaker, importantly, Bill 7 is in line with the work of this 38th Guam Legislature to push forward bills that help the economy. And I will say and reiterate the word forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
C. Masi, Senator Gumatalto. On Bill 738 as amended, is there anyone else who would wish to speak on the measure? On the motion, hearing and seeing none, Senator San Augustine. Oh, well, that's correct. Senator San Augustine, one moment, please. Senator Perez, you're recognized on a question that you were asking the author to yield to. My apologies.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my question to the sponsor of the bill is if he can clarify what was meant for that citation in B2 or II, 75122C, sorry, 75122C2A21. So if he can correct that, because that doesn't exist.
Senator San Augustine, do you yield?
I'm trying to understand now. Are you referring to, Mr. Speaker, is the question posed, that's on page 4, line 24, am I correct? Okay, if I could take a minute, I can confirm. If it's true, it doesn't exist. And if it doesn't, sure, we'll delete it. I need to verify that.
Okay, let's take a
Thank you.
moment's recess. Why don't we go ahead and take a lunch break until 2 p.m. while they're setting this up, okay? So recess is then to take a lunch break until 2 p.m. Thank you very much.